So I often tell women that we sometimes make a false dichotomy between like the nice vanilla guy who's going to be like a really stable, solid husband, but you're not like so excited about him. And then there's like the uber intense chemistry that you have with the guy who's totally not marriage material, the player, whatever you want to call him. It's like the chemistry's through the roof. You can't even breathe. And so if I'm going to have to choose between one of those, okay, yeah, maybe I'll choose the vanilla nice guy. Wrong, ladies. There's a third option, which is Goldilocks, right in the middle, which is the guy that you are attracted to that also makes sense for you.
Welcome to You're Allowed to Hate Your Husband, a modern day love story. This is not about hating your husband. It's not even about having a husband. It's about living a life full of health, happiness, love, success, and joy. We are going to improve your love life by improving your love of life. I am Remy Stern, the founder of Levy by Remy. It's time to create a life that you love with so much love. So hop right in.
If you are currently in the dating process and looking to find a partner for life, so a husband or wife, realistically, if you are dating with that intention, this episode is for you. We cover what a green flag is, what an orange flag is, what a red flag is, how to improve someone versus, trying to change them, because we all know we can't change someone, but we can improve them, but how to know what you are looking for, when it's the right one, when it's not the right one, how to have faith, we call it emunah, and excitement and joy in the dating process, but actually a very practical episode on how to find your person. We have Devorah Kigel. She has an incredible book called Marry a Mensch, and she is just so well-spoken and articulate on telling you how to marry an amazing guy, Mr. Right. So please listen to this episode. It's too good. Hop right in, and I'm so excited for you to hear it.
So I grew up in a very small town outside Philadelphia. I was one of 2 Jewish kids in my elementary school class.
Wow.
And in high school, there were 8 of us out of 260. So, and no one observant at all. I didn't meet a Jew that was like doing mitzvot until I was 24. And I came to New York City. I lived in Paris for a couple of years. I had my master's in French, which was useless but fun. And then I came to New York City for my first job. And I walk in the first day and there was a guy there wearing a kippah and these strings hanging out of his shirt. And he says he's Orthodox. And I was like, where are your payas? So I really knew nothing. This was pre-Netflix, but I must have watched a movie about Hasidim. Anyway, so that was kind of the first step for me. I was very, very far from Judaism. I didn't believe in God. I was like not educated at all. At some point I realized, I have my master's in French and I have like a preschool education in my own religion. This like doesn't match. So it takes me an hour usually to tell the whole story. So I'll just suffice it to say that it was a very long, slow journey. But the thing that attracted me the most was the dating, Jewish dating, which is, of course, why I became a dating coach and wrote my book. Because I heard that there's this way to date that, the guy takes you out to dinner or to coffee and gets to know you for real, like who you really are deep down in your soul. And you owe him nothing in return but the pleasure of your company. And I was like, sign me up. Whatever I have to do to get this, I will do.
And that was it. That was like the
selling factor.
Wow.
I always tell my students that God brings everyone how they need to be brought. This is the only thing that would have done it for me. I was like happy. I had a great social life. I was living in Manhattan. Like I had a good job, whatever. But I was so unhappy with my dating life, which was quite active, but I was ready to get married and I was not meeting a good guy. I was not meeting a guy that was treating me well, respectfully, that really wanted to like commit. And I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. Should I be Amish, Mormon? Like, what should I do? And little did I know that in Judaism, we have so much deep dating wisdom that was just ready for me to take advantage of. And I just never heard it before. So that's kind of what led me in. God came much later, much later.
It's so funny. And I typically don't like to bore the guest with my own story, but like it's so ridiculously similar that I just have to know. It's wild. So I grew up in Los Angeles in a Jewish actually world, but like it was not spoken about at all. I don't think I knew what Shabbat was. Like I don't think even like maybe I knew Friday night one person went home for dinner, but like that was the extent of it. I'm actually half Mormon. So funny you said Mormon, or a fourth really.
So interesting.
My dad's mom is Mormon.
Wow.
But definitely didn't know what kosher was, like knew nothing. Went to college. My parents split up. And obviously when you're going through like a hard time, that's when you're seeking something. I grew up very spiritual. So I actually didn't have the word God, but I had the ideas and the thoughts about God, but it wasn't the words.
Right.
Parents split up. I went through a breakup. And funny enough, the first thing that intrigued me about Judaism actually was Shabbat. That was number one. I was like, oh, interesting. Like if every single Friday my dad had to come home and put his phone away, like maybe there would have been, we did family
Different
dinners.
life.
We had the best, thank God, childhood, the best family, but there wasn't the structure to it. There wasn't the foundation of this is why we're in it. One of my biggest question marks was like, how do you stay married for, 20, let's say 20 years, because that's where my parents ended, but 40, 50, let alone 40, 50, 60, like marriage to me was the first thing that I was like, every person I know in LA is getting divorced. Like every person's parents. I see the pain that the kids are going through. I see the pain the parents are going through. This can't be right. Like we got something wrong here.
Right.
So then I did a deep dive on like relationships, marriage. I was like, this 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off thing makes a lot of sense. It keeps, some sparks, some this.
Yeah.
Then I realized I went farther back, and this is what's going to get us to where we need to be, was that we don't even know who to marry. We're marrying this person that we like had fun with on a few dates or however many years. My parents typically do believe in dating for like 4 or 5 years, engaged for like 2 years. That's their way. I did not do that in the end. But we don't know what we're looking for. So then we're ending up in things that maybe aren't right. Maybe they're right to get divorced. I don't know. They don't have the tools to stay married. They don't have the tools to find the right person. They don't know the tools to be alone, like let alone to how to live on your own and love yourself. So I just saw that it was a whole mess, especially with the hookup culture. Now we've got the app culture. Like there is no guidebook to how to do it until now. Hello. Actually, yours is brilliant too. But Judaism provides wisdom, not just for religious people. Yes, for like super religious people, but also for the world. And that's the subtitle of your book, correct?
Yes. Timeless Jewish Wisdom for Today's Single Woman. That's exactly why I wrote it in a very easy, friendly way to understand it, user-friendly. I specifically picked a publisher that wasn't going to censor me because I really wanted to get the information out there the way that I speak it. And many girls have told me, like, I feel like I'm sitting on your couch, Mrs. Kigel, and just talking to you. And that's how I wrote it. I wanted it to feel very informal and very like user-friendly and not judgmental, which is me. Like I've never met a client that's going through something that I didn't go through, like unfortunately. And that's what makes me good at what I do, because zero judgment. And I'm like, let me share what I did different that helped me,
But isn't it cool to look back? Like I love the quote Steve Jobs says of like, you can't see the dots connecting looking forward, but if you look backwards, you can see them connecting. So you have to trust that they're going to connect looking forward. So now both of us, thank God, married, kids. I'm definitely at the younger kid stage, but younger. Yeah. Oh my God.
Safta, as we say, because I'm not a bubby. It just doesn't work for me. I'm like 37, you know what I mean?
Oh my God.
So yeah, thank God we have 3 grandkids so far.
That is so exciting.
Which is, by the way, the best thing I ever did. I should have done this sooner.
Yeah, exactly.
It's literally like all the good, none of the bad.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yes, my mom is learning that right now too. But we can look back, and I'm so grateful for the heartbreaks, the relationships that didn't work out, the times where I felt so lonely and lost and confused. I can look back and be like, yeah, that made a lot of sense. Like I had to learn something in that moment to get me to where I am today. And I'm learning a lot now to, God willing, get me to the next step. So anything that you went through, you turn around and with compassion and love can lead someone else through it. That is like everything and more in life.
So I often talk about this because thank God, been through a few big challenges in my life, still going through some. And I feel like I'm in this position to be able to help a lot of other people through similar things. So for instance, when we first got married, my husband was a finance guy who worked on Wall Street. The first 3 years of our marriage were thank God, filled with financial abundance. Thank God I got my jewelry and my furniture then, or we'd have nothing. But like, thank God. We lived in this gorgeous, classic 6 on the Upper West Side of Manhattan with the Lexus and the whole thing. And then we moved, I had 2 kids already. We moved into a bigger apartment, and literally from one second to the next, the parnasa, the money switch, was turned to the off position for 5 years. I would not wish this test on my worst enemy. In Judaism, it says that a person who loses all their money is like they're dead. And I definitely relate to that. We went through our substantial nest egg very quickly and had to move out of the city, kicking and screaming, to New Jersey. And I was like, New Jersey? Like, I've lived in Paris, like New York. Like, I can't live in New Jersey. Okay, thank God. It turned out for the best. We are very happy. And then it ended up, my husband made a huge career switch in his 30s. He ended up going to Kollel, becoming a rabbi, and now he does outreach for a living for the last 17 years. We have like Shabbatons at our house for college kids, like almost every week. And, so I look back and I think to myself, no one leaves a lucrative Wall Street career to like almost pay your bills in Jewish outreach. Like, it's not financially responsible. So God had to leave us with nothing for a significant chunk of time so that we'd be like ready for this new chapter in our life. So now I look back and, it's like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. Like, sometimes God pulls back the curtain and you get to see why something that felt so painful, so horrible, was actually the best thing for you. Like you were saying, you're not only learning lessons from it, but actually it's like GPS instructions, like taking you where you need to go. And that needs to happen. So now I'm so grateful that we're in New Jersey. I'm so grateful that my kids were raised there, that my husband made this career switch. So I try to take that mentality of, this is very hard for me because I was an atheist for 25 years. I try to take that emunah, faith and trust mentality into the next challenge that I'm in. It's so hard. Mm-hmm. It's so, so hard. But I try to remember, like, okay, God had our back. Like, he wasn't doing it for naught. We needed to go through that painful experience. I mean, we had the power turned off. We needed money from the rabbi for Pesach to make Passover one year. Like, it got really bad. And, I had my parents in one year who are not, observant Jews, who were saying don't have any more kids. You can't afford it. And then I had the rabbi in the other year saying, it's like a segula, right? Which means like a good omen for money to have a baby. Because if you have another mouth to feed, God has to feed it. So I was like, okay, so that's my son. That's Yoni. That's my son. So always listen to your rabbi. But it took my next kid down for the money for my husband to actually get the job that he has now. It was excruciating. But you get to my point in life and you've had enough of those experiences. Like, I had a broken engagement right before I met my husband. So you've had enough of those that you're like, okay, you know what, God? I'm just going to go with it. I don't know where you're leading me. I don't know how what I'm going through is possibly good, but I'm just going to reserve judgment and see with curiosity where this takes me.
Oh my God. This is literally me in a nutshell. So much so that I had that experience too. And that's what triggered my parents' divorce. So bravo that you guys lasted through it.
And they say, I think that it's the first number 1 or number 2 reason for divorce is finances.
Marriage. And we're going to get to a mensch and who you're supposed to marry, but who you marry is extremely important because they become your financial partner per se.
Right.
They become a co-parent. They become your best friend, also your lover per se. Your exactly. We go to them for everything.
We expect a lot out of marriage these days.
Our spiritual partner, our travel partner. We expect so much from a person, but they really are. You wake up next to them every day. You have a majority of meals with, a lot of meals with. This person matters a lot. So finding out what to look for is super important. And there's 2 points that I want to run with, but I'm going to go with the first one. The second one's going to be that emunah, that faith. I even think of it as bitachon, you are being protected to the deepest level, and to know it in the moment when it's hardest to trust is everything. And I think probably the first and maybe the hardest, but the first step is having emunah, let's say, when you're dating. That is, I think, one of the biggest challenges in the dating process. But before that, we'll get to that in a little bit. I want to define, just because this is the name of your book, what a mensch is. And for someone out there who, we're not going to like say Jewish terms because maybe they don't connect to it, but like, who is the guy that people want to marry? What's the good guy that isn't the guy you're settling for? You know, you've got that connection, that spark, but it's not lust.
Right.
But that guy, Mr. Right, like
this is the sweet spot, right?
who-
Goldilocks.
Who
okay.
is Mr. Right that we're looking for?
Right. So I often tell women that we sometimes make a false dichotomy between there's like the nice vanilla guy who's going to be like a really stable, solid husband, but you're not like so excited about him. And then there's like the uber intense chemistry that you have with the guy who's totally not marriage material, the player, whatever you want to call him. It's like the chemistry's through the roof. You can't even breathe, you know? And so if I'm going to have to choose between one of those, okay, yeah, maybe I'll choose the vanilla nice guy. Wrong, ladies. There's a third option, which is Goldilocks, right in the middle, which is the guy that you are attracted to that also makes sense for you. So we call this a Mensch in Judaism. I believe it's a Yiddish word, and it basically just means like a good guy. So I read an article once that was titled "Marry the guy who's gonna, take you to the bathroom when you're throwing up from pregnancy," or I don't know what, something like that. Meaning, life is not a simple journey. No one gets through this life scot-free. Like we're talking about, serious struggles with finances or infertility, or like so many things happen to people. Mm-hmm. You want to find a husband or a spouse, in case there are, men listening, that is really there for you through thick and thin for the right reasons. I'm a little bit older than you, although I pretend that we're the same age. And, things are not necessarily where they used to be physically, since I was like 22. You want to meet a husband that is going to just love you so much for who you are that, okay, I don't have as much collagen, whatever, it doesn't matter. We have a shared life together. We have shared values. Okay, so how do we find this mensch? So first of all, obviously one of my main points, and this is what I learned about Judaism in terms of Jewish dating that really impacted me the most, is that I was leading continually with my heart and my hormones and getting into loads of trouble leading with that, right? Oh my gosh, and like, he's so amazing. And wait, I don't even know if he like treats me right. Okay, 3-6 months later, right? I have many clients who waste, unfortunately, years of their life with guys who are just unfortunately not right for them. Either they're just not compatible or they're really not treating them well. So we don't want to lead with our heart or our hormones. We want to lead with our head, but bring those along after. So again, the vanilla nice guy might just be leading with our head. If we bring our heart and our hormones along after, we're going to make sure that the guy who makes sense for me also makes me really happy and I'm excited about him and I'm attracted to him, of course. But I think I have a whole chapter in my book devoted to, Disney and rom-coms. We've all been, unfortunately, subconsciously brainwashed with the idea that all I have to do is meet the right person and it will click right away and I'll know right away on the first or second date and it'll be like pitter patter and butterflies and, instantaneous. And then I just choose correctly and I sail off into the sunset. And of course, anyone who's married more than like 6 months to a year knows that choosing correctly is half the battle for sure. Staying married is the other half. And so my personal feeling is if I had to distill successful marriage into 2 things to look for, okay, maybe 3. 3 things would be what we call a lev tov in Hebrew, which means a good heart. A growth mindset, meaning he wants to grow and improve and become better. And number 3, that he's willing to seek outside help for mentorship. So obviously in the more observant Jewish world, that's going to be your rabbi, right? Maybe in the rest of the world, it's your therapist or a married uncle or an older married friend. But when I have a client that's dating someone who's just like unwilling to seek advice or mentorship or even admit that he doesn't have all the answers, I'm like, run the other direction. Mm-hmm. Because so much of marriage, it's really similar to I compare it to this, that if you had like $3 million to invest, you would 100% hire a financial consultant to make sure that you invested it properly and didn't lose all your money. So too, marriage and life in general is complicated. you don't have to go it alone. Like seek a third party. So obviously my husband and I, whenever we're kind of dealing with an issue and we've kind of sort of gone around and around a few times on the issue and we can't really get to a resolution. So we go sit with our rabbi, he lives across the street, and we sit down with him, talk for half hour, 45 minutes. And I feel so much lighter.
Mm-hmm.
It helps that he usually agrees with me, but
That's opposite of mine.
99% of the
Mine
time.
agrees with Jonathan everything.
Oh, really?
But it's my own life coach. She's a Rebbitzin. And I call her and I'm like, he's so annoying. He did this, 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 and this. And she's like, well, he's right. I'm like, no, he's not. And then at the end, I'm like, you're right. He is right. And then Jonathan's like, I'm paying her on the side.
Right, exactly.
Yes, keep going.
Pay her on the side. So having that third party that is objective, right, that you're both going to for advice is a game changer in marriage. So just going back to the dating. So we want to look for someone who has our core values, right? We want to be looking at the same vision of what we want out of life. Certainly Judaism is a topic that you want to talk about very early on, or religion, how you'd want to raise your kids. You don't want to get like 6 months into a relationship and realize you're totally a mismatch and that was like such a waste of time, of everyone's time. And then the main thing, obviously, that we're doing different in the Jewish way of dating is that we're shelving the physical relationship, leading with our head, bringing our heart along next, hormones all the way in the caboose, right? Like all the way at the end of the line. We don't want to lead with that, which means that, and again, I'm a realist and I coach women from across the religious spectrum, many women who are not religious at all, but are looking for a better way to date. And I tell them, just start off. Like as long as you can handle it, shelve the physical for the beginning of the relationship. You will give yourself this bubble of objectivity where you really get to see, A, is he right for me? And B, is he interested in me for the right reasons? Because obviously if there's no side benefits happening, no Netflix and chill, no situationships, et cetera, and he's still asking you out and he still wants to spend time with you weeks into the relationship, so then he must really, really care for you, who you are.
Oh my God, it's so good. I'm going to have to dive into specifics of what you said, but just zooming out, that was one of my biggest realizations was I actually come from like a very Hollywood-esque LA world. Like I literally grew up in it.
Wow.
And first of all, the Hollywood movies show you up until the marriage. Please show me a Hollywood movie that portrays a marriage and like shows what marriage is, but in a positive, good way to look at it. And if it's either like this fake perfect marriage or it's like, when you get married, your life is over and it sucks and good luck and you probably will get divorced. Like It goes to the happily ever after, and then we never talk about the real life after. And also, if we're going to look at Hollywood, they like celebrate when people get divorced in Hollywood. It's like, who had the shortest marriage? Like, oh, this one was 24 hours. Like marriages don't last in Hollywood. And I don't know about you, everyone out there, but like, I want to do this thing right. Like I want to be in it for the long run. I want to build a happy, beautiful home. So this happened to me where I was like, we have to do the opposite of what we are doing because if the statistics are over 50%, that is not good. So let's do the opposite. I went to Israel. I studied. One thing they told me, which is like exactly what you're saying, is that the way we date in secular world, especially I was in college at the time and in the hookup culture, college, like I said, is physical, emotional, intellectual. So it's PEI. You see someone, they're handsome, maybe you engage in physical activity, it feels good, you're having fun, great. Then you go emotional. Do we have fun together? Do we both like, concerts? Do we both like skiing? Do we both like reading books? Like, do we have fun together? Great. Last, intellectual. Oftentimes you won't get to that till your kid's already in school and you guys are realizing, wait, we do not agree on any of this, and you get divorced because you're like, we cannot agree on the deepest foundation of it.
Right.
Switch it around, IEP. Intellectual first. And it's hard to do this because you're like, but I want dating to be light and fun, which it should be. Like you don't want to sit down and be like, tell me how you want to raise your kids.
Right.
Even though I think my husband and I, we had the most fun dates, but I think our first conversation ever, we were set up was about kosher. And like, it was a funny way that it came up. But first, intellectual, look at your values, your vision for life. Does that match up? Because that is the foundation for marriage. Right. You can always revert back to that. Yes, of course. Now, do we have fun together? Do we like similar things? You should definitely have similar likes. That's non-negotiable in my opinion. But that doesn't a relationship doesn't rely on that, because what if the person breaks their knee and can't ever ski again or something.
Right.
And like, now you're like, oh, they changed. We can't go on ski
Right.
trips. It's like, yeah, people change. Like that's
Yeah.
literally the point of it. Meanwhile, my husband and I love going out, dancing, doing all these things. I am tired by 8 p.m. right now. I'm pregnant
Right.
and tired. Like he went out with I was like, take my sister out, my younger sister, because he wanted to go out. So Saturday night they went out together, but thank God he loves me for more than just going out and dancing, you know? And then last is physical, which it's important. You should look at the person and think, you are handsome.
You should be excited, right?
You are beautiful. Like, thank God. I looked at my husband last night. I'm like, you are really good looking. And like, I really like you.
Right.
That's great. I'm tired. I'm going to bed because I'm pregnant.
Exactly.
But you're really hot. But like,
continued.
Exactly. One day. But I love the way that you put it in whichever form makes sense to anyone out there, but you really did it in such a digestible way. So we've got this first portion, which is the head. You know, it's that intellectual portion.
Right.
And you're saying it's good heart, it's growth mindset, and seeking out, you know, being able to seek out help. But I'd love to even dive deeper into all of those, because when you're dating, it really can feel confusing. It's like, you're saying this, great, but like, what do you actually mean? So a good heart, what does that look like in someone? I think I once heard you say it has something to do with gratitude and like, but tell me more of like what a good heart's going to look like.
So first of all, I often tell people that, you know, on dates, the other person is really trying to put their best foot forward and impress you. So you have to kind of almost step back and be a little bit of a detective and like perceive how he's treating other people that he's not trying to impress. So this is cliche, but like, how does he treat the waitress when she brings the wrong food or spills something on him? You know, the parking garage guy, the lady at the checkout, you know, all these people, service people that he's interacting with, you're just like observing. You know, you want to pay attention to how he speaks about the people in his life. How does he speak about his mother, his friends, right? Is he just saying like, yeah, like he owed me a favor, so it was not a big deal for him to help me move, my friend? Or is he like, it was such a huge favor that my friend did to me. You know, I was like so overburdened at work and I had to move apartments and like he came over and helped me with the boxes. It was so amazing. How is he telling the stories about his life? Does he show gratitude? Does he show that he has a lev tov? Is he kind to people around you? Is he kind to you? You know, is he self-focused? Is he trying to like pay attention? Like, oh my gosh, you look cold. Like, let's go inside, right? Or are you hungry? We've been out for a few hours. So one of my clients told me recently they were out for 7 hours and he brought like one sushi roll. And I was like, okay, either he's out to lunch, which could happen. Like some guys are just inexperienced daters. And if you mention it nicely to him, you know, you'll see that he improves. But like, really, you were out for 7 hours and he wasn't thinking that maybe you'd be hungry, like that's troublesome to me. Mm-hmm. So I call that a yellow flag. Mm-hmm. It's not a red flag yet, but we're paying attention. We want to look for more data. Like as you go out with him more, like, do you notice that he's just really not paying attention to your needs? And when you do bring something up, is he responsive to that? You know, that also is the mark of a lev tov. Like when you say, you know, I love it when, you know, it would mean a lot to me if you had asked me out a couple days early, you know, so that I could plan out my week instead of like last minute. And then you see that he changes and he's like, of course, that makes so much sense. I'm sorry. Like, let me try to do that. And then he incorporates that piece of advice into how he's treating you. That also shows lev tov, growth mindset. So you want to just take a step back. And of course, we can't notice any of these things if we're so infatuated because we were already physical. So again, that's why I'm advising just like shelve it for the beginning of your relationship so that you can really focus without all the oxytocin and the dopamine and all those like love chemicals, so we can really like lead with our head and be like, hey, that wasn't so nice what he said to the waitress. You literally will not see it if you're like drugging yourself up with oxytocin. So we want to perceive that he's like a good guy, that he treats you well, that he's respectful. He wants to hear your opinion. What do you think about that? Where should we go next date? You know, that's the lev tov. The growth mindset, as I said, when you bring up some piece of like nicely phrased constructive criticism, he responds really well, as opposed to gaslighting you, getting defensive, blaming you, right? Any of those like red flags. Again, we're not necessarily going to perceive those things if we're drugging ourselves up with oxytocin. So we want to like really be in the beginning, like almost a little bit like a detective. So yeah, I agree with you that, so what I generally say, and I write this in the book, like the different stages of dating, date 1 and 2 is basically airplane talk. right? Like you got on a flight to Florida. Okay, so it's a 2.25 hour flight, not a long flight. And you sat next to someone, she's wearing a Jewish star. What are your conversations going to be like till you get to Miami? You're not going to be like, so what are your deepest held fears? That's weird. You're going to be like, oh, what do you do? Did you ever go to Israel? Like, who's in your family? Stuff like that. Do you enjoy your job? Things like that we're going to keep it very light, date 1 and 2. And I'm a big believer in don't get ahead of yourself. I used to do this regularly as a single girl. I'd be like, is this my husband?
Yeah.
Like 10 minutes into the date. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I really tell my clients, we're not thinking about that until date 3. So all we're doing after date 1 is thinking, would I like to spend another couple hours with him? That's it. Second date, would I like to spend another couple hours with him? Third date, now we're thinking, okay, my deal breaker list, goals and values, do we match up, et cetera? How's the connection going? Is the attraction getting a little bit better, et cetera? But we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I think that honestly, if I had to think of the biggest thing that women struggle with today is feeling rushed and pressured and anxious. So my job is to take all that stress off you. Enjoy, again, in a kosher way, but enjoy yourself, have fun with him, and don't be evaluating too early, is this my husband? Now, the caveat to that is like you're saying, you don't want to get too far in having not talked about the things that are really, really important to you, like your values. So date 3, we start to do that. You could even start on date 2, if it lends itself to that. But date 3, we definitely want to be talking about like our relationship to Judaism. Do we want Friday night dinner? Do we not? Where could we see ourselves living? What communities do you like? What got you to where you are today? What are your strengths? Stuff like that. But not in like an intense interviewee way, just kind of like chill. But you don't want to get, again, 6 months into the relationship and realize, gosh, we are really a mismatch. Our values are totally not aligned, or we're totally looking for different things Jewishly. And now we are so emotionally connected after 6 months that it's hard to break up.
Mm-hmm.
And I get a lot of clients who unfortunately wasted months and years of their life with people that right off the bat, they knew were not, they had an inkling that maybe they weren't right, but then they got invested physically and emotionally. And then like a year and a half later realized, oh, actually he's not interested in marriage, or, oh, actually he's not really interested in Judaism, or whatever it is. So you want to definitely make sure, even JSwipe, I tell my clients that are on JSwipe and the apps and stuff like that, put in your profile, like a line about being marriage minded, and then like when he starts messaging you, hey, just wanted to double check that you saw in my, my profile that like I'm really only looking for someone who's marriage minded. Let's not waste time. Like most of my clients are not 19 anymore. I definitely have some younger girls, but a lot of women in their late 20s and 30s and even early 40s. We don't want to waste time. I really want every woman out there, and this is really why I do what I do. Honestly, this is what I have in my mind, that every woman out there who wants to be a mother should have that opportunity. And I don't want you to miss it. It's the best thing that I ever did in my whole life.
Okay.
Whole life is my 4 kids and now my grandkids. I don't want anyone to miss that because of bad decision making in their dating. So that's really my headspace. And like I always joke that I'm still having babies, even though my shop is closed, because like I have so many clients who are now having babies, like many over 40. Thank God. Like it's amazing. And I feel like when a woman over 40 has a baby, I feel like so blessed to be in this position to help them to have gotten there and not miss that,
I'm so excited to get, I feel like I'm going to push the emunah portion and that optimism to the end, because it's so powerful. And I have so many technical questions before then. I mean, everything you just said is out of control. Perfect. And you know what? I'm going to brag about Jonathan for a second, and brag about myself that I noticed this, because I didn't have those words at the time when I was dating. But I remember when I was dating Jonathan, I witnessed how he talked to this waiter. We were at this restaurant. They were out of the pasta, but you were going to this specific restaurant for the pasta. And he was so cute to the waiter. Like I remember being like, wait, I'm obsessed with this guy. I'm obsessed with him. And obviously what happened at the end of the night, the waiter brought us the pasta and he was like, we had one more, like I'm giving you guys the pasta. And I was obsessed at that point. Right. But it matters because recently we were at this wedding. I was pregnant. I was so sick. I was ready to get home. And we go to get our car. It was 2.5 hours away from here. I drove because I wasn't drinking. So I was like, I'd rather not go on the bus. I'm going to drive. We go to get our car. The people lost our keys for the car. And we were there. We were by far the last people there at like 1 or 2 in the morning. They couldn't find it. We couldn't leave our car 2.5 hours away. We need the car with our daughter, with this or that. My husband stayed so calm the entire time. Like, did not break a sweet, calm face. Then the worst part is they drive us 45 minutes back to this. They were like, okay, we're going to get you your car. Don't worry, whatever. They drive us 45 minutes back to the city. They find our keys. They drive us 45 minutes back there. And people in our car were like, how did you and Jonathan never break a face of like, what the heck? But that showed on the first date. And then once I finally went back to his apartment, I don't think it was the first date, but when I went back, I was pretty good at the Shobra dating style.
Great.
But his doorman stopped and was like, Johnny boy, what's up? He was like, we had the best time playing baseball with you last weekend. Like, that was so much fun. I look and I'm like, this guy who's living in like one of the most luxury, probably the most luxury buildings in Manhattan, is going with the doorman on the weekends and playing baseball with him and his kids.
Down to earth.
And he was talking about his mom, like she was the queen of the freaking world. He still thinks that way about her. Like, it shows, and this stuff matters for marriage. That's all I want to say to you guys is it matters.
Yeah.
He is so nice. I'll make like the most disgusting meal. And he's like, this is the best meal I've ever had in my life. I'm like, don't lie to me because then I'm never going to believe you. But like, it's true. I'm bragging on Jonathan right now. But the last thing I'll say, and this is my question for you, is to give, I'm an open book, here I am. But that physical portion, the attraction, let's say not the spark, okay? The spark version, because I'm going to ask about the difference of lust versus that spark. But in certain relationships that I've had, it also wasn't there, that like spark, but they were a good person. They were a good person on paper. And I didn't feel that pull to them. Thank God with Jonathan, now I'm seeing the good heart matched up, the growth mindset, the reaching out to people. I think that's a hard one because it takes maybe time, especially for someone to come around to that. But in every way, Jonathan's the best. But I also did have that spark with him.
Right.
And when people ask me, they say, is it when you know, you know? With him, thank God. I mean, there were things that I was like, can I deal with this for the rest of my life? And I'm still dealing with them now. And I'm like, this is so annoying.
Like any relationship.
Oh my gosh. And I saw it at the beginning. I see it now, but they're not deal breakers. They're the way he orders a bagel. Like, I can relax.
Yeah, exactly. This is right. Exactly.
But, or he cuts lines sometimes and I cannot. But
do you remember when Harry met Sally, the way that she orders like, and everything on the side? And
No, you don't understand the way my husband orders. Extra, extra, extra ice. Do it extra well done. Black, black, black. And I'm like, just let the chef do it the way the chef does it. Don't change the whole order.
Right.
Drives me crazy, but here we are. But that portion of it being right, knowing it's the one, but how do you differentiate? You know, you've got the good guy. Then you've got, am I settling for a good guy? Do I have the spark? Then you've got the, whoa, I have the spark, but he's also a good guy, but is it lust?
Right.
Or is it spark? It's very hard to determine this. So just breaking down those two.
So first of all, I always, when I'm giving a speaking engagement or I'm speaking to a client, I'm always like, let's be frank. You know, if you're sitting with a guy that you're super attracted to, without touching his pinky, you know you're super attracted to him. And they're like, yeah. So we don't have to invest physically to know, oh my gosh, I'm super attracted to this person. I'm super drawn to them. He's adorable. There's chemistry, etc. So that's point number one, is that we don't have to test drive the merchandise to know that we're super attracted. That's number one. Number two, we can't get engaged to someone that we don't feel that way about. However, I do have a lot of happily married clients that it didn't kick in till like a bit into the relationship. Now, I always say there's a difference between ew and right? So we're not going on a second date with ew. Like, I just forbid it. But if you're kind of like, like and sometimes I ask them for a picture. Like, can you send me a picture of the guy you're dating just so I know what we're talking about? Like, I had a girl recently said, like, she's not sure, she's attracted to her, and she sent me a picture and he's like objectively super cute. So I was like, okay, you're continuing to date him. Let's just like work with it a little bit. I just like to get a feel for like, what are we talking about here? So you could be dating a guy and like early on, you're kind of like, okay, he's like normal looking person. He's like officially like a cute guy, not whatever. I'm not feeling particularly drawn to him, but he's really nice. Wow, he really matches up in a lot of ways. Third date, fourth date, fifth date. He's so considerate. Wow, he has Lev Tov. Wow, he's so growing. He's like, we're so on the same page about things. One thing I think people underestimate is sense of humor because first of all, A, life's hard and you need someone who makes you laugh. B, I think that the reason that people share a sense of humor is because they actually look at the world similarly. And that's why they think the same things are funny. So it's actually much bigger than, it's not just, oh, he's funny. No, it's like you think the same things are funny because you look at the world in a similar way, which is what we want. So third date, fourth date, fifth date, it's getting better and better and better. Oh, he's cute. He's really cute. Wow, he's really cute. Okay. And then 10 dates in, you're like, okay, I don't even know what I was talking about. He's adorable. So I've seen that progression. This is something that I'm going to make a generalization here. In general, women are become more and more attracted to someone that they're connecting with emotionally. And men become more and more emotionally connected to someone that they're attracted to. I don't coach men unless they're dating my client because I don't even understand the male brain really. Stay tuned for the sequel to the book. Maybe I'll get my husband to help me write it. But I wrote this book specifically for women because I understand the female brain more. But guys really do need to be super, super attracted right off the bat. Date 1 and 2. Like they really just have to be like, this is the most gorgeous girl that's ever talked to me. Women are different. We can sort of, again, it has to be on the chart. He's a cute guy. I don't know yet. And then the more you get to know him, you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm totally falling for him. He's adorable. It might not be the most crazy chemistry, infatuation, lust that you've ever felt in your life, because in my mind, that sometimes is like trauma bonding or like unhealthy. But you have to be super excited. I would never give my stamp of approval, so to speak, to one of my clients getting engaged unless they were like, it's difficult to be Shomer Nagia. Mm-hmm. Like it shouldn't be like a piece of cake, And for my more religious clients, because like they're not even thinking in that way, I'll be like, do you like his eyes and smile? Like, do you want to sit closer? Are you like excited for the date? Do you miss him? That has to be there. We can't marry someone that we don't feel that way about. All I'm suggesting is sometimes it's not instantaneous, and we don't want to break up with someone because it's not that instantaneous lust attraction that we saw in the movies. We want to give it a chance to develop, especially with the emotional connection. So oftentimes if I have a client who's dating a really great guy, everything's checking off on paper, she shows me a picture, he's a normal looking person, and she's just not feeling enough excitement, I'll tweak a little bit the relationship. Like for instance, I'll ask her, were there any moments on any dates where you were like, he's so cute? What was going on at that moment? Copy paste, right? We want to replicate what's working. So she might say to me, we're having this like really deep philosophical conversation. And I was like, whoa, he's just so deep. That's very attractive to a lot of women. So great, do more of that. Or you were goofing off and had like just like a funny mini golf date and you just thought he was so cute. Do more of that. Whatever's working, we want to do more of if everything's good on paper. But please, ladies, do not break up with someone who's amazing just because it's not the crazy infatuation that you might have been used to in the hookup culture. And again, that is another thing that when you're dating, shelving the physical in the beginning, this is on purpose, obviously. When you're physical with someone, you feel a fake closeness. Mm-hmm. It's like artificial closeness. And we don't want that because we want to be, again, leading with our head. However, that might weird you out because you'd be like, whoa, we've been out, 6 times and I don't feel like the way I did to my college boyfriend after the first time we were together. Okay, but that's on purpose. We don't want to be like so bonded to him that we can't see reality of who he is. So it's almost like we're stepping into love as opposed to falling. Mm. We're stepping carefully, but we cannot obviously get engaged to someone that we're not super excited about.
Yeah, it's so, I'm going to say this every time you talk, but like so many amazing things. By the way, one of my favorite things is that my husband hates keeping mikvah, keeping that. Like I love that he hates it, obviously, because
right. And it would be weird if he didn't.
Yeah,
like that would be
exactly.
weird, especially
Exactly.
because you're like 20, whatever.
when I explained it to him, and he knew, but when I explained, he's like, yes, whatever, sounds great. Now he's like, we're not doing that, and I hate it. I'm like, good, we are continuing to do it, because the more you don't like it, that means the more you want me, which means that 2 weeks
Right.
we don't physically, we have our version of it. So
Right,
it's
right,
not
right.
perfect, but we don't physically engage. And I want him to want me those
Right.
2 weeks. And so, yes, agreed
By the
with
way,
that.
another really like amazing side benefit of that system is that, the 5 love languages or whatever. So it really forces both people to like amp up their game in all the other 4 languages, right? So, acts of service and like words of affirmation and gifts and quality time, that frankly, if the physical were there, we might get lazy about the other things because it's so easy to connect physically and to feel close. Same thing we're talking about with dating. And like God wants us to stretch ourselves as people and as loving partners that, we want to express in words also. We don't want to just resort to a hug or to a kiss or whatever. You want to hear in words like, what does your husband really appreciate about you? It also really like leans into the friendship side of the relationship, which is something I talk about in dating, that at the end of the day, your husband is should be your best friend, not your best girlfriend, because that is still a separate category, but your best friend. And those 2 weeks of the month or 12 days usually, you're leaning into that side of the relationship that might not be like fully actualized if you could be physical.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I love it. I think it is a wonderful thing. So I'm all for
Yeah.
it. So what I'm hearing is there's the 2 kind of situations, right? There's the one that is physically driven. So let's say someone's not Shomer Nagia, they will be physical with the person at some point and they're dating. And that's okay for both sides. Fine. I'm so for the program of hold off for as long as you can.
Yeah.
I'm so for it. But as a realist, let's say someone's not being Shomer Nagia. Okay, great. But this one is driven by the physical.
Right.
And guess what? When there's fire, it either burns you or it burns out, because both of us are married. And like,
Right.
it's not the big fire. I'm happy that I have that with Jonathan, because when I'm dancing with him at a wedding and all of a sudden I remember the way that I saw him when we first, and I'm like, oh my God, the spark is there, but no, when we're sitting on the couch after I just put my daughter to bed and this, like, the fire is not there. Like,
I always say kids are the best birth control.
literally, it's like, I'm tired, don't touch me.
Like it's a miracle that anyone has more. But anyway.
I am putting sweatpants on and looking as ugly as humanly possible
Right.
at the end of the
It's
night.
so funny.
But there's the one that's driven by physical, that the fire is either going to burn you or going to burn out. And the values are not there, but people get too stuck in this one. And it's scary and a bummer when it happens.
Right.
And then there's the other one that is sometimes could be a little slower to start. We don't want to say boring, but could be slower to start.
heat up, like an iron.
Yes, slower to heat up. It can be fiery. Like again,
Right.
I like to get with Jonathan. Like really, we did have that spark too at first, but like you said with women, it's true. If you start to feel that connection, wow, you're a good person. Oh, you care about me. Oh my gosh, like you do this, you become more attracted to them. Like
Totally.
there's nothing cuter than like a hot dad, which really just means like that dad that's being so cute with the kid. And you're like, oh my God, like
Right.
that personality is extremely attractive. So you're saying if there's 2 options, please continue down this one and see what happens, because it's not a love story. It's a life story, like Esther Perel says. So you want to go for the person you're building a life with. So just to define the other one, we've kind of talked about the green flags, right? The green flags are the heart, the growth, the looking outward, and amongst many other things. Can we look at orange flags and red flags? Like how can we see an orange flag or red flag and be able to tell that that's one?
Right. So again, unfortunately, you probably will not recognize them if you are invested physically, because you will just be like, oh my gosh. And so infatuated, you're like, I'm sure that was nothing. And you sweep it under the carpet. So again, I tell my clients, if you can hold out as long as possible in the beginning, you will actually weed through probably 99% of the guys who are either trouble, red flags, not good guys, not interested in you for the right reasons, not compatible. You'll weed through 99% of that. So like that's my goal with them. But obviously we want to be paying attention to, again, how he speaks. Does his temper flare up easily? Does he get defensive when you make like a suggestion? Is he trying to like isolate you from the rest of your life? There's a whole list in my book of like red flags from the, some agency that put together like 10 red flags or whatever that we should be looking for. But that's really what I try to help my clients, through is he said, what? Like I'm your extra set of eyes and ears. Like I'm not on the date being all infatuated. Like I'm only just listening to you after the date and I'm taking in the data like a machine. And I'm like, he did what? I write it down. Right now, it might be a yellow flag. So, like, okay, we don't know. Maybe
what would a yellow flag look like?
Okay, so I have this story in the book that there was a woman who I was working with. She came back from her third date with her now husband. That she's ending it. That's it. She's breaking up with him. I'm like, okay, I'm so happy you called me. Not everyone uses me properly. I'm happy you called me. Like, what's the deal? And she said he talks about himself and it interrupts me.
Yeah.
Okay, now again, that could be a red flag, which means egotistical, selfish, etc. Or it could be just a bad habit that he's not aware of and that he actually has a lev tov, a good heart, and he just didn't realize. So we always want to differentiate between bad character and bad habits. So I said to her, at this point, you have nothing to lose. Okay, it's one more date, a little bit more Sephora. Okay, go on another date and I want you to bring it up. How someone, this, I'm sure, how someone reacts to constructive criticism is very revealing. So I said, you're going to bring it up in a nice way. And I gave her a script. I'm sure you didn't realize, but you're kind of like interrupting and it's hard to get to know someone if only one person's talking. And I gave her the script and I said, if he has bad character, what's he going to say? Gaslight, defensive, not taking responsibility, blaming her, like totally not with the program. Great. Now we have clarity in our kishkas, as we say, right? In our gut, we have zero doubts. This is not your husband. Goodbye. And now I can close the door, lock it, and move on. Let's say he has a good character and he just didn't realize. And it's just like a coping mechanism. Maybe he was nervous for a few dates, whatever. What's he going to say? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's terrible. Please tell me if I ever do that again. Of course I want to get to know you. That's why we're here. Which is literally word for word what he said. She was like, how'd you know he was going to say? So thank God they are happily married. And this is one of my clients she was 45, never married, and she had a baby.
Oh my
and I'm just like, I always say this is my ticket to heaven, this lady. But anyway, so that's a clear example of something that she had every legitimate reason to feel this is a red flag. This is a deal breaker. I don't want to be with someone who only talks about themselves and interrupts me when I'm speaking. 100% agreed. But could it be that he's a good guy and just like had like a bad habit that when pointed out to him, he would absolutely want to change? And again, that's where the ordering at the restaurant, or maybe he eats too fast, or he does these little things that at the end of the day really don't matter in marriage, as you and I both know, but could kind of like be off-putting in the beginning. And so we want to like tease that out and make sure that it's not a red flag. Absolutely. I don't believe in sweeping under the carpet. And part of what I do is that since I'm writing it down and it's in my notes, we have accountability. Like sometimes, we probably both had this experience where you're dating someone and like you notice something that you didn't like that was significant, but like 4 dates later, you forgot. And then it happens again, but you forgot that it already happened again. So now it's like a pattern, but you've swept it under the carpet and like deluded yourself into thinking it was fine. I'm writing it down and I'm going to be like, so have you seen any other times that he was doing this from 3 dates ago? And she'll be like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about that. You know what? Last night he did the same thing, So there's accountability there. And so I'm going to catch you if you fall. That's how I look at it. It's like, I'm catching you on both sides of the fence. I'm not going to allow my client, quote unquote, my client to get married to someone that I think there's serious red flags. And I'm also not going to allow you to break up with someone that I think there's so much good here. And we just might need an extra few dates for the attraction to click in, or, a conversation about what you prefer. And he really is a good guy. So I'm kind of like catching them on both sides.
Yeah,
I wish I had had me.
I know.
I really do. I would have saved myself like so much pain and suffering. Just, I was going blindly. And it's just, I'm trying to be what I would have liked in my 20s, obviously I have clients older than that, but I just would have loved a coach, just someone to be like, I'm yours. I'm your advocate. I'm also my client's cheerleader. You're talking about Emunah and Bitachon before. I feel so passionately from the bottom of my soul that everyone has a mate, and that I communicate that to my clients. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how many people told you you're not going to find what you're looking for, which, by the way, people told me. That is false. God is the matchmaker. The matchmaker is not the matchmaker. She's a servant. She's just whatever. We have to do our hishtadlut. We have to do our due diligence. If you want a job, you have to send resumes out, go on interviews, network. So too with a spouse. But we can't get confused about who's really running the show. And since I have that confidence and I see it every day, we're up to number 313 this week.
Wow.
We got engaged. I
Oh
have
my
this confidence.
gosh.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem.
Wow.
So I'm able to communicate that sense of like hope and optimism and confidence to my clients, which honestly is probably maybe the most important thing when you're dating, as you said in the beginning, to just feel like this date might be it. You never know. Like that feeling of like, you never know. It could be right around the corner. Instead of feeling like, okay, I'm sure this date's going to be terrible, another DOA, dead on arrival, blah, blah, blah. And then we come to the date with that energy and we're not going to be, how's it going to go well? It won't,
Of course. It's so many good things. I do want to now turn to Emunah.
Yeah.
But just to recap, what I'm hearing is that orange flags are inevitable to come up because you're not going to like everything about everyone. So is it going to lean towards the side of this is something that you might have to accept about the person because there are things that we will have to accept, like the way that Jonathan will order his food. I love him for it now too, even though every time I cringe.
Endearing. Exactly.
So I love it about him too. But there are ways that I have improved him. An orange flag, there is a chance that you can improve it. So no, you can't change someone. Someone comes to me and they're like, can I change the guy? You cannot change somebody's character.
Right.
So don't try to because it's very offensive to them. But there are things that you can improve, can uplift. And that's when it falls under this is a mensch.
Right.
The side of this is red flags pretty much come to you to find out.
It's like character versus habits. So I'm sure I don't know how long you're married. What did you say? 3.5 years?
No, 5, I think.
5 years. Okay.
4.
So you probably know this already, that, your husband might not have all the skill sets to communicate the way that you need, or the 5 love languages. When my husband and I read that book and did the test, we were married 15.5 years. My husband turned to me and he's like, I understand you for the first time ever. Okay. So that was a skill, like a relationship skill that we didn't have yet. And that's made our relationship better. It doesn't have anything to do with his character, right? He always had a lev tov. He always wanted to make me happy. He just didn't necessarily have all the communication skills necessary or the relationship skills necessary. And I've learned a lot along the way as well. So that's different. I don't even want to call it a yellow flag necessarily. It's just you notice something that you would prefer to be changed, but it's not his character. You're right. We cannot go to the wedding thinking I have a to-do list for his character improvement. No, this will be a fail on every level. But when we see certain things that, I prefer this or I prefer that, or, I like it when, we talk first or communicate, Of course, everyone learns things in relationships, and hopefully as we're married longer, we're going to be like even better spouses, but we're not trying to change the essential character that he has.
Okay.
And that's what we want to have our eyes wide open to, is like, if you notice things that are really character-based, he's just not a good person. He's not a mensch. That's why I characterize the title that way. This is not going to stand the test of time.
I love it. And then the second part that you brought up, which is the Emunah part, I think it has a lot to do with finding joy in the process, because if you are pessimistic about it, then you don't have Emunah in it. And if you're like, oh, every guy is this, every guy is that, what follows I am comes to find you. And that's a quote. But it doesn't just mean I am. It's every guy sucks. Okay, yeah. So that's going to come find you. There are no good guys. Yes, that's going to come find you. Right. I always end up with the guy who doesn't like whatever is going to come after that's going to find you. So you better go into this because it's going to make it more fun for you. You are more likely to meet your person sooner.
More efficient.
With joy, happiness, optimism, openness.
Right.
Kind of the opposite of what people often go into dating with.
Right.
And I actually sometimes say, like, go in thinking this is probably not your guy because you're looking for one singular person. So the stats of it, or that this might not be your guy, but be open to it being your guy.
Right.
And because if you go and you're like, this must be my husband, I hope it's my husband, you get disappointed every time. You don't want that, but you want the openness to, I want to experience something exciting and new tonight. And if it's the worst date ever, that was the exciting new thing I had to experience. And voila, Hashem wanted me to have that. But that emunah portion is that you have, how many did you just say? 300?
313.
That should be the evidence that we need in order to say every single person out there who wants to get married, who wants to have kids, God willing, will find that person, because Hashem wants that for people. Look outside. Everyone, for the most part, is matched up. We don't know when, but if it's tomorrow, let's give crystal ball. It's happening for you. If it's in 5 minutes from now, when you walk outside, turn the corner and bump into someone, would you want to be upset that it hasn't happened yet? Or would you want to be excited for when it's going to happen?
Right. Yeah. So on this note, I really believe very strongly that the way to be joyful in your dating process is to do things that nurture yourself. Don't make dating your whole job, right? Like if it's your whole life is dating, that's going to get you so burnt out and you won't be able to have that hopefulness. So I advise my clients, like, don't press pause on your life. Do things that make you happy. Travel. People are like, I don't want to travel because like, what if I meet him? Don't do that. Like travel, go to Israel, learn new things, go out with your girlfriends, have fun, like work out, make yourself an interesting person, first of all, because you'll be an interesting date. And secondly, you're going to be so much happier because you'll be filled up with like joy and excitement that you'll be an awesome date and you won't be unhappy and pessimistic because you have such a full life. Dating is one part of that, So I agree with you completely. And when it's the right time, it's the right time. I feel personally that like God was just like, okay, she's suffered enough. Here, because like I wasn't necessarily in the best headspace when I met my husband, to say the least. I really kind of had given up. But I guess when I think back, I guess there must have been that 1% that was like, maybe. Because when I met him, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I think this is it. So there must have been a part of me that was still holding out hope, but I was pretty beaten up at this point. Like I was really, and I wasn't so old. I was 26 when I met him.
Very young.
But I was so beaten up. Wow, was I like, I had lost hope for sure.
I get it. I hit that point too. I actually turned it around and was like, you know what? I'm turning the ship around. 6 weeks later, I met Jonathan.
There you go.
With that energy came that.
Yeah.
That is where I think for the most part, we should leave it, because that is your recipe for success. But the last question I have before where people can find you is, if you were to give that one main piece of advice to your younger self, and you could just be like, honey, you got this, and this is your advice, what would it be?
So I had a broken engagement 3 months before I met my husband. And the reason that happened is because I'd given up and I thought okay, it's only 2 choices, vanilla guy or, swag with chemistry guy. And I didn't realize there was a third option. And number 2, I was not clear on what my deal breakers were. So in like the first chapter of the book, I talk about making a deal breaker list of around 10 items, think the 10 commandments, that are character traits and personality traits that for you are not negotiable under any circumstances, no matter how cute and charming he is.
Positive and negative.
So on the negative side, I call it airborne peanut allergies. Like I cannot be in the same room as someone like this. And on the positive, it's a must-have. So it's like deal breakers, deal makers, right? When we're clear on these 10 or 11 items, you will date so much more efficiently. The guy that I was engaged to violated like my top 3 deal breakers, my top 3 allergies. He triggered me. He was a good guy. He was a really good guy. He's happily married now. But he triggered me based on my own unique upbringing that it would have been a disaster. So had I known that, had someone told me, or if I had had my book back then, I don't know if I would have gone on a 3rd date with him, let alone gotten engaged. Because I just wasn't clear on like what is not negotiable for me and what could I compromise on. So I help my clients to really determine what are the things that I'm sorry, like these are my red lines. I can't have this. It's not good for me. And what are things that at the end of the day are just not that important. Maybe it's his family of upbringing. Maybe he's from a different culture. Maybe he has a different job than you thought. Maybe he's a different type physically than you thought you were going to end up with. Those are things that we could be flexible on, but we can't be flexible on these non-negotiable character and personality traits, because if you know yourself really well, then you know what's going to work for you. And I look, everything happens for a reason, but I really wish someone had given me that advice back then. I would have, suffered a lot less. But that's the first thing that I do with my clients is when I hear their history, I can almost make their deal breaker list for them because I see it coming through their life. That's how you get a deal breaker list, is your family of upbringing, particularly your other gendered parent, and then your dating history, even your friends. Like you can see, like, who do you gravitate towards? Like I gravitate towards people who are very positive because I'm just like, I want to be drawn in that direction. And I married someone who is like positive almost to a fault. He's like caricature of positivity. And again, that is a last point that I will say that's very important. Once you know what your non-negotiables are, you then can't complain about the flip side of that same trait.
Yeah, we could do a full episode on this.
Right, you could do a full episode on this. This is the key to marriage, is like, okay, I was drawn to someone who's really positive and like playful and like spontaneous. Okay, maybe he's not going to be the most super responsible, et cetera, guy. You can't have opposites in the same person. So then you have to decide to yourself, which is more of the deal breaker for me? Like,
oh my God, can we please do an episode on that?
I would be happy
it's such a thing. And people come to me when they're dating and they're like, he sucks because he's all these things. I'm like, yeah, but that's why you love him.
That's why you liked him, right?
And I experience this too. I'm like, oh my God, I wish you would do all these things. I'm like, wait, but that's why I like you.
Exactly. And we know from ourselves, like the things that were attractive to my husband about me, the flip side is I could be, I'm very, very driven, which is what he wanted. But like, I could be a little bit like, okay, no, like okay, when are we going? Da, da, da. Right. So and this is the beauty of marriage, as I'm sure you know, is that you affect each other. By nature of living with each other, it's contagious. So I've become like a really positive person because I've been married to my husband for a quarter of a century, and he's become very, very driven. And it's really probably the most amazing thing about marriage is that we want to look for someone that, brings something to the table that we want, and vice versa,
So good. So pretty much, please go read her book, reach out to her, all of the things. Please tell people where they can find you.
So my website is my full name, Devorah, Devorah, Kigel, DevorahKigel.com. I have podcasts up there, my favorite books divided by topic, my dating pointers, tons of stuff. You can order the book on my website. It is on Amazon, Mensch. And I'm on Instagram, all of the social media platforms I'm on, at Devorah Kigel. And I really am very responsive. Like, people don't have to feel like they need to hire me as their coach to, have contact. If you want to reach out and you just want to run your deal breaker list by me, and, I do that for free. You want to run your list by me and say, is this a normal list? Come on Instagram, message me. I'll tell you if it's a normal list. I won't be able to tell you if it's your list because I don't know you, but I'll be able to say, oh, you have two things that are opposite here. Maybe you want to decide which one is more important. So at Devorah Kigel.
That's so nice. Please, everybody reach out to her. This was so good. I had the best time.
Please write an Amazon review if you like the book.
I think you're going to get a lot of positive ones. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me. This was great.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Thank you for listening to the series. If you like our podcast, please show us some love. Your love helps us grow and allows us to give you more of what you want. So like us, follow, review, subscribe, all of the good things. Share it with a friend, share it on your social media. It helps more than you know. We release a new episode every single Monday, so stay tuned. We love you.